My name is Charles Donovan. I'm 66 years old, and I never imagined that the boy I raised with my own two hands, the boy whose scraped knees I washed, whose tears I wiped, whose dreams I financed would one day make me feel like I was nothing more than an old man taking up space in a life he thought he owned. And maybe that's why the day he sold my car without even asking me felt like someone had ripped out the last piece of respect left in our relationship. But what he didn't know, what he couldn't have guessed in 1,000 years, was that selling my car was going to be the biggest mistake he ever made? Because he had no idea what that car really meant, or what secrets it carried, or how fast karma could turn around and knock the arrogance right out of a person. That old car wasn't just metal and wheels. It was the last thing my late wife Emily and I restored together before she passed away 10 years ago. And every time I drove it, I felt like she was sitting right next to me, laughing at my terrible country radio, singing or reminding me that life was still worth living even after grief tried to drown me. But my son, Ryan, didn't care about any of that, because lately he'd been treating me less like a father and more like a bank account that sometimes talked back. And when I confronted him about selling my car, he didn't even look sorry. Instead, he shrugged and said, "Dad, you don't drive anymore. You don't need it. I used the money to pay off some bills. You should be thanking me." And that was the moment something inside me cracked. Because that car wasn't just something I needed. It was the only piece of my old life I still had. The life where I was respected, appreciated, and not spoken to like an inconvenience. But God has a way of balancing things none of us understand. Because 2 days after Ryan took the money and acted like he'd done me a favor, the police showed up at my door asking about the very same car. And the second the officer said the words, "Your vehicle has been implicated," I felt my stomach drop like a stone thrown into a well. Officer Ramirez was calm but serious as he explained that the car had been captured on multiple traffic cameras fleeing the scene of a hit-and-run involving a major insurance scam ring they'd been investigating for months. And according to the system, the vehicle was still registered in my name, meaning I was now the prime person of interest, unless I could explain who had it, why they were driving it, and where the money from selling it went. And suddenly my son's casual betrayal didn't just hurt emotionally, it was threatening to destroy my life. I called Ryan immediately, but when he answered, he was annoyed, not worried, and said, "Dad, stop calling me. I'm busy," and I snapped. I told him the police were looking for the car, that it had been used in a crime, and that he needed to get back home immediately, but instead of rushing to help, he said the 7 words I will never forget. "Well, that's your problem, not mine," and he hung up on me. Something cold settled in my chest, then not sadness, not anger, but the kind of clarity that only comes when you finally see someone's true face, and in that moment, I stopped being dad, old man, burden, or anything else he had reduced me to, and I became a man who was done being stepped on. I called Officer Ramirez back, told him everything truthfully, how Ryan sold the car without my permission, how I had no idea where it was, how the title had never been officially transferred. And that was when the officer asked me a question that changed everything. "Mr. Donovan, do you have proof?" And as fate would have it, yes. Because Emily, my brilliant, organized, detail-oriented wife, had always taught me to keep copies of everything. So the original title, locked safely in my desk drawer, still had my signature, but absolutely none from Ryan or the buyer, which legally meant the sale was invalid and whoever had been driving the car had essentially stolen it. And when Officer Ramirez saw the documents, his entire tone shifted from suspicion to protection. He told me they were issuing an alert, not for me, but for the individual in possession of the vehicle, and that I should stay available in case they needed further details. Meanwhile, I sat on my couch staring at the empty driveway where Emily's car used to sit, thinking about how far things had fallen between me and my son. That night, around 11 p.m., my doorbell rang not once but over and over, loud enough to shake me awake, and when I opened the door, there he was, Ryan, pale, sweating, panicked, begging me to let him inside. "Dad, the police called me," he stammered. "They said the car was involved in something, and I might be questioned, and they need to know who I sold it to, and Dad, you have to help me. Please. It was the first time in years he had said please. I stepped aside and let him in. Not out of weakness, but because despite everything, he was still my son, but I wasn't going to protect him from the consequences of his own choices. When he started pacing in front of me, ranting about how the buyer paid in cash, how he didn't get their real name, how he just wanted quick money, and how he didn't think it was a big deal, I realized he wasn't scared because of what he'd done to me. He was scared because it had finally threatened him. That hurt more than anything else. So I sat down across from him and said, "Ryan, the police asked me for proof of ownership. They now know the sale wasn't legal. They know whoever has the car stole it. They also know I was against selling it. They're tracking the car as we speak." He stared at me like a child caught stealing from a cookie jar. And for the first time in a very long time, I spoke to him not as a father trying to keep peace, but as a man setting boundaries he should have set years earlier. "You betrayed me," I told him, "and that's something the police can't fix, but life can." Before he could respond, Officer Ramirez knocked on the door, this time with an update. They had recovered the car abandoned behind a warehouse, damaged, stripped, and clearly used by people trying to avoid identification. They had also found surveillance footage of the buyer footage that cleared both me and Ryan, but proved that selling property without transfer documents is dangerous for a reason. After the officer left, Ryan collapsed on the couch and sobbed, not out of guilt for how he treated me, but out of relief for himself, and that was when I knew things had changed forever. I stood up, picked up my coat, and said, "I'm going to bed, Ryan. You know where the door is." It stunned him. For once, he saw that I wasn't the desperate father begging for his son's love. I was a man who finally remembered his worth. Over the next few weeks, something unexpected happened. Ryan began showing up, not for money, not for favors, but to help. He cleaned the garage, fixed broken steps, cooked meals, even really apologized for everything he had done, and maybe it wasn't perfect. Maybe it didn't erase the years of disrespect, but it was a start. The car was eventually returned to my possession, damaged, yes, but still repairable, and when I saw it again, I placed my hand on the hood and whispered, "Emily, we'll fix it again. Together." I don't know what life has planned for Ryan and me moving forward, but I do know this: sometimes the universe lets things break not to punish you, but to rebuild what should have been stronger all along. And as strange as it sounds, losing that car for a little while may have been the only way for my son to finally find his way back to me.